You're listening to the 49 Carats podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Tuesday. What are we doing here on a Tuesday, Weston? The explanation is that I had to get some oysters yesterday. It was an actual thing. Like, it was supposed to be some happy hour. Did you know that March is National Oysters Month? So this spot that me and my girl go to, we love oysters, so it's the seafood place, and they were having an event. They're going to do 50-cent oysters. Missed the cutoff. They sold they said they sold like 1,700 oysters, like within like an hour and a half or before we even got there. So we didn't get to do the 50-cent oysters. But in any case, that's why we did not do a show yesterday, Monday. But Weston, glad to have you here today. And I'm actually glad like we ended up doing it on the Tuesday. It worked out because now we have way more to discuss. We had John Lynch speaking with the media yesterday at the NFL's owners meeting. Today, we had Kyle Shanahan, Jed York. We got plenty more from Shanahan, I think, than we got from Lynch anyway. So let's just get into it. But before we do that, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
The week does feel weird that we're beginning on a Tuesday. Let's just call it what it is, Steph. You know, your boss put her foot down and said, "We're having oysters on Monday. I don't care about what you do with that guy, Weston. He's not that funny. He's certainly not that handsome. So we're rolling." And here we are. And I agree wholeheartedly. That extra 24 hours just gave us a whole lot more to discuss this evening for sure.
Indeed. I like how you said that your week starts on Tuesday now with this show. This show starts your week. So can't be mad at that. But let's talk about just some of the high level topics, right? So we got some updates on the Brock Purdy contract, or at least, just some new quotes from that. Jake Brendel, we're going to talk about the 49ers draft philosophy the last few years. That's an interesting one. And we'll talk about Greenlaw. Kyle Shanahan was asked about that and their last-ditch effort to try to keep him. And then if we have time, we'll get into some other secondary topics that were discussed. Mac Jones, the competitive offseason that is expected to be this offseason for the 49ers, and why TE2 is so important for this offense, and how Kyle Shanahan looks to add wrinkles to this offense. So let's start with the Brock Purdy contract talk, right? I think in hearing what both Kyle and John had to say about this, I would say that, it's the same song and dance we hear every year, I would say, Weston, and, this time was no different. I would say from Kyle specifically, he was asked if he was prepared for a Brock Purdy holdout, and this is what he had to say about that.
Are you prepared for a potential holdout for quarterback position?
I hope not, and I know Brock doesn't want to do that. We don't want to do that. I mean, no one wants to do that, but these are negotiations that go on between agents and our organization, and it's over a lot of money and stuff. Those aren't just things that you just knock out right away. But I believe that we will. I hope that we do, and hopefully it won't come in any football stuff.
All right, so thoughts, Weston, on this one?
My initial thought is, gosh, being the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers for 8 years can certainly have an aging effect. My God, Kyle, I feel you as somebody who is not too far removed from him age-wise. I feel your pain. I just, what I get, not just from Kyle, from the other ones, is, I don't know, a little sense of optimism, a little sense of like, hey, we're trying to work through this. But I think you had a little bit of like sheltering himself or deflection, if you will, being like, I don't control this. I don't want it. I don't think the player wants it. I don't think collectively as a team we want it. But said contract negotiation is out of our hands. And that's kind of the sense that I get. But I was a little excited just to hear Kyle be like, we don't want it. no, I'm kind of not prepared because I kind of want to go into this with the expectation I'm going to have my quarterback and it's not going to cut into any football activities. So I'll take that as a positive note coming out of that conversation.
You know what's interesting about that is I got the same sort of sense. There is some deflection from Kyle, and there was from even Jed York, which he's like the top man in charge, being the owner. But even he was like, I'm not in those conversations. So I think like it comes from knowing that there's this now somewhat negative connotation with these negotiations because they drag out, they've gone so long, they're contentious. Like everyone knows 49ers contract negotiations are just not the smoothest. Like that is just what everyone knows. So yeah, I did kind of get that from Kyle and Jed. I thought it was interesting. And another thing that I kind of got from both of those guys, and here I'll throw up what John Lynch said. He said, quote, there's motivation on both sides. I don't think it's too optimistic. And what he meant was like, it's not too optimistic to think that a deal will get done. We've just got to find that right place for both sides. I would love nothing more than a quick contract resolution. And then finally, what Jed had to say, I don't think we're that far apart. I think we can sit down and get something done. Whenever he's ready, we're ready, end quote. So another piece of this that I'm seeing is that like it's not just the deflection of, hey, I'm not part of those conversations. It's also a deflection of this is on Brock.
For sure.
And I feel like we've heard this before from the 49ers where it's like, it's all on the player. We've got everything set up. We've made our offer kind of deal, which they haven't said that officially, but I'm assuming there's at least a starting offer on the table already. And, you know, now it's like, it's on him, balls in his court kind of deal.
I agree. I think that last line from Jed is the most telling. Whenever he's ready, we're ready, which means we're ready. We put a number in front of him. We're happy to sign him at that number. When he's ready to accept what his value is, we'll get this thing done. I just think, to your point, Steph, that all right, like in my professional world, like I live in this software world, right? And there are certain major Fortune 500 companies out there that they tend to be very difficult to negotiate with. So when you are buying from them, you go in knowing that, and you're playing loose, you're playing fast, like you're not taking any nonsense. And I think that's like literally what these agents are doing now, right? Is like, look, the blueprint's there. Just deal with the BS for the 4 or 5 months when it should have gotten wrapped up. And we get this, the closer we get this thing to training camp, the more likely we are to win the negotiation battle. And let's not forget, listen, I'm making this up entirely. Please nobody read into this. But 49ers could have said, Brock Purdy, here's $45 million, right? Annually. That's what it's going to look like per annum. And he's going to say, I love it, right? And the agent might be like, not so fast, guy.
Right.
Here's why you're not going to accept $45 million. And you start to paint this narrative. Right. And then Brock, like, let's call it what it is. Like these agents, 10%, right? 10, 12, 15, depending upon the percentage, $45 million. Sounds like a $4.5 to $5 million, bonus for these folks. Like it's their money too. And I just think the story's out about the 49ers, and it's clear as day. Make it muddy, make it murky. And if you're a marquee player or they value or pegged you as that, you're going to get what you want. You just got to hang tight.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, Kyle just mentioning like, yeah, these are negotiations that go on between agents and our organization. Again, kind of him saying like, that's not me. Like, and Kyle's been known to come in at the 11th hour and slam the table for his guy. But, I think at this point, he's not really involved in the Purdy negotiations. But this much is clear, I think, Weston, that the 49ers are moving on with Brock Purdy. And Jed York did say, like, they had made the decision last midseason, 2024 midseason, that, like, they were going to make this commitment to him. So that's good. That's refreshing. And again, it's just about coming to that right price, which we know could take some time.
But this is the problem that I have is whatever the right price is in the 49ers' eyes, I don't care. I imagine Brock's people aren't that far off it, if I'm being honest with you, right? So my question the York family and to Parag is the extra $2 to $5 million a year that he wants versus what you're going to give him. Is it worth going through the turmoil that you know you're going to go through? And probably we're going to hear a lot about this going into OTAs, camp, etc. Competition. Well, if you are sparking competition at all these positions and you are trying to get your team and like, let's just be a good football team and let's shed the rest of this weight that we've been carrying around as an organization. The best way to do that is to have the most important position in all of professional sports in the building.
Yeah.
To me, that's worth an extra $10 million a year. You know what I mean? To have those guys humming and to get more from the people that are costing you less because they're getting more reps, more time with this said individual who's supposed to be your leader. But I agree. Everything sounds like there's no more hesitation around is Brock the guy that they want to extend. Now it's just about like, what's the number and when can we land on it?
Yep. And hopefully that number does come sooner than later. But as we know, we should not hold our breaths with these things. Steve-O has a fun fact. Steve-O has a fun fact in the comments. Mahomes' contract is 100 pages long. I got to be honest, that doesn't sound fun. Like, that sounds awful. But, but I think the point Steve-O's making here is that this is probably part of the reason that these contracts do take a long time to hash out. There's so many details, and especially, again, we're talking about the most important deal, most important position on a team is the quarterback. So, yeah, you want to make sure all of that is good. It's reviewed by the agents, yada, yada, yada.
And this is a great point brought up by Steve-O. Again, I go back to like what I do professionally. Like these negotiations take longer than this negotiation is going to take with Brock. It's just a matter. When you get into these types of numbers, a 100-page contract makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of nuance to that. There's a lot of people that need to check into that. There's an agent, there's a lawyer, there's PR, there's all so this people in their camp that need to be part of it. So I understand that it takes time. What I think the 49ers fans, myself included in this, are struggling to grasp is this has been on the horizon for quite some time. Right? You should have been well out ahead of this. If this was the guy. Doesn't sound like 2024 and Brock's season has derailed their thought process on him being the guy whatsoever. So why are you not ahead of it? When you see Josh Allen get his and other people get theirs, they're out ahead of it. That's the difference right now is they're like, I feel like 49ers front office is far more reactionary than they are proactive. And that's perplexing because we just saw Deommodore Lenoir get extended and nobody even knew that conversation was happening. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, where's more of that for your valued individuals?
Yeah, I agree. And I have the perfect segue to that. But first, I want to get to the super chat from The Unfaithful Perspective. Thank you for the super chat. He says, if it gets done, I can't wait to see the money. I don't just believe at face value that all these sacrifices is for Brock Purdy's contract. They're just slashing. That's before we get into that segue. I think this is a good point too, because we've heard, especially Jed York, like he's getting asked a lot of questions about the cash spend and why they're wanting to cut on the cash spend. And really the only reason they give, I don't want to call it an excuse, but the reason they give is Brock. And I feel like that's not fair. I feel like that's not totally accurate. And it's kind of just a convenient excuse, right? The timing of it and everything. But yeah, because I'm just not buying that it's all because of Brock Purdy. And yes, when Brock Purdy's deal does get done, they will be back as one of the top cash spend teams, probably, as they also keep mentioning. But I don't know. I just don't think it's fair. And I don't think it's completely accurate to say that Brock's contract is the only reason that they're doing all this money slashing.
Yeah, Brock's the perfect scapegoat in this particular scenario. But the reality is like they could do the extension without anything that they already did this offseason. The purge, a little bit necessary, right? In my opinion, I think if I had to guess or be in the mind of Jed York, it's like, all right, we did the all in. Didn't work. Got it. Now we know we have to extend the quarterback. I'd feel a lot more comfortable extending the quarterback if I could shed some of this other dead weight, right, in other areas, and then really get a look as to what this roster is going to look like go forward, knowing that piece is in place. Because the reality is if you extend Brock let's say they were highly active in free agency. We know those rarely ever work out. So there's even more cash burn going out, and the quarterback. And if the quarterback's contract doesn't work out and those didn't work, then it's just a shit show. Then it's just a complete disaster. This is all about hedging the bet, and Brock is a scapegoat for it. And to the naked eye, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. And, unfortunately, I think it's going to be part of the reason that we see at least some fans turning on Brock. It's going to be part of the reason that the whole perception around Brock Purdy's deal, to some, not every fan, it may turn negative, right? But again, to go back to the segue I wanted to go to before, you mentioned something interesting, which was that you feel like the 49ers are reactive in a lot of things. And one thing that the 49ers were asked about, or Kyle Shanahan was asked about, and John Lynch himself did say that the 49ers were reactive in, was Dre Greenlaw's negotiations, right? After, they found out that he was being seriously courted by the Broncos and that they offered him a deal and he had accepted. And at the 11th hour, they looked to make, an effort to keep him. So Kyle Shanahan did reveal a little bit of that. It's a bit of a longer quote. I'm going to play the video clip here, but so just bear with me here. It's a little longer.
It just worked out that way. I mean, we would have done that in the past if it came down to it. But, when you're going through the recruiting part, when he's committed to someone else, we wanted to see Dre face to face. And he happened to live in Texas, so it was a little farther. We couldn't just meet him at our facility. So John and I wanted to fly down there and talk to him and give ourselves one last chance.
But why not sign him before free agency even begins? I mean, why wait until he's agreed to a deal with another team?
Well, we tried to. There's negotiating tactics and everything. And you're also, it's not just one player at a time. You're working 20 different things at a time. You're trying to get a backup tackle. You're trying to get a quarterback. You're working on linebackers. You're working on safeties. You're working on all these positions. And they don't just go in order like that. You're negotiating with agents, and these things happen. Sometimes you see something on Twitter, just like you guys saw, and then we still like another shot. And we took another shot, and we weren't able to get it done.
All right. So again, I think that shows the perfect example of the 49ers being reactive in their approach. And I think it's purposeful, right? He mentioned negotiation tactics.
Yep.
That is their tactic, to kind of wait and see what X player's market is. We've seen them do this a number of times, and a lot of times, it does work out for them. They're able to get a player re-signed back for cheap after they've tested free agency. And I think this is just one example of it going worst case scenario, right? And, they kind of ended up with egg on their face, because now the world knows that, they made this effort at the end, and still Dre Greenlaw didn't want to come back. I do know the narrative out there is that Dre Greenlaw, and it's not really a narrative, I think it's fact, that Dre Greenlaw did want to be the LB1 somewhere. But a part of me thinks that he probably wouldn't have even went as far to thinking what he can be on another team had the 49ers just made him the same offer that they were trying to make him at the 11th hour before he even hit free agency, right? So that's my thought there, but definitely reactive from the 49ers.
Super reactive. I think the Dre Greenlaw situation is a little negligence. I mean, listen, I thought Kyle did a fantastic job articulating the fact that they are constantly talking to 20 to 30 plus players that are in contract negotiations, right? And I don't know if most people know this, but the staff that is actually employed by a professional sports team is really small, right? Even though they drive a lot of revenue, these are not big organizations, a couple hundred people, right? At the end of the day. So like a lot's going into that. A lot of that's moving. Every agent and every person's playing a different game. I think where the negligence comes in with Dre Greenlaw is I just think they were a little bit too confident that they'd be able to pull him back, especially with Salah coming back over and knowing the rapport there. Probably put a low number out, put it aside. I do agree with you, Steph, that if the number was right out of the gate to the tune of what they might have been putting in front of them, they flew down to Texas to try to convince them to not go to Denver, we're probably not having this conversation. But you can't fault Dre for being a little salty. You know what I mean? Like you see, yes, you want me to go test the market. Cool. So you know what the value's out there, but what's my value to you based on what I've brought here? Seems low. Okay. Probably not going to stay here, coupled with the fact that I'm never going to be LB1 as long as 54 is in the lineup next to me. So I do think it's a little personal, a little salty, and a little bit of the negotiation tactic blowing up in their face, and a little complacency, feeling a little too confident that they probably were in a better position to bring them back than they really were.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, like there are times, like we said, that a type of negotiation tactic like that is going to be beneficial to you. It's going to work out perfectly, and there's going to be times where it doesn't. And unfortunately for the 49ers, for us fans who love Dre Greenlaw, it happened to be the unfortunate route with Greenlaw and this negotiation tactic. But yeah,
let's give Kyle a little credit though for his explanation, right? Because the reality is, he's got the perfect opportunity to come out and say, I don't handle the contracts. I wanted the player, but
there still was a bit of a deflection though. Yeah, I mean, although I do like the effort of actually flying out to Texas face to face, 2-hour flight or so. It's not nothing.
On a PJ, let's be honest. It was a real difficult stretch out there, Kyle, I'm sure. We didn't have the time to get out there. Well, what else are you doing in the office? Listen, I know he's got a family, he's got kids, and that's the only time he gets to see them. I get all that, but that's a day trip.
Well, no, it's funny because, the other reason he gave was, we got 20 other things we've got going on, and it's like, okay, so do other teams, and they have no problem signing free agents, and let's not forget, the 49ers felt like they didn't even sign that many free agents. So I digress, but yeah, I mean, at least I appreciate the honesty, I guess, on that one. Now, in regards to the linebacker position in general, obviously now that Dre Greenlaw is out of the picture, Kyle Shanahan was asked about D. Winters and if the team sees him as kind of being the next man up. Well, Kyle pretty much said that, they like his game. He definitely fits what the 49ers like to do. They saw, flashes of it. He has to stay healthy, and he's working to stay healthy for a full, season. But he also mentioned they're going to address linebacker in the draft. He did mention that. And so I think we can pencil in linebacker as a position that the 49ers are going to look to in this one. And so while, they feel good about Tatum Bethune as well, and D. Winters, job's not done there. I mean, there's a big hole left with Dre Greenlaw departing. So yes, it'll be nice if Winters takes that next step. But I think we're also wanting some new blood in that room as well. And it sounds like we're going to get it this offseason.
I'm going to call it what it is, Steph. You're going to see new blood everywhere, right? I think that's one of the reasons I'm most excited for this draft. And I'm sure you and I will talk at great length as we get closer. But the reality is the way that this roster is shaping out, 49ers are in a position to be BPA all the way through this draft, right? Stock load of position, whatever it might be. Yeah. But I'm not surprised whatsoever to hear that there's a big old bullseye probably on a couple of these linebackers in the draft. And I'm sure they're very particular about a couple individuals, not maybe just the big names, somebody that fits what Salah might be looking to do. But this defense in the Shanahan Lynch era is at its best when that middle pack, right, that second row of the defense is just flying to the football and taking tight ends and running backs out of the passing game. Do I think D. Winters has that in his game? I do. But consistency and health are going to be the things, and you can't put all of your eggs in the D Winters basket, in my particular opinion, no matter how much we want to like them and how much we want to root for them. I think it would be malpractice to not see us draft, not post-draft unrestricted free agents that you're bringing in, draft. Like I wouldn't be shocked if you saw 2 linebackers come off for them.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. And Kyle Shanahan talked about that they're expecting this offseason to be one with a lot of competition, especially on the defensive side of things. And yeah, that's part of the exciting thing of this whole retooling or rebuilding of the defense is there's some fun in that, to just kind of see, like, put all these dogs and these competitors in the same room and let them figure it out and let them go for it. And I think that's what we're gonna end up seeing this offseason from this team. But we're finding very good segues in this one. One that I wanted to address is maybe the most damning quote of from Kyle Shanahan. And I'm trying to find the slide here that I have. Me and my damn slides. It's about the draft.
Thank you for attending our PowerPoint presentation this evening.
Maybe I should do this for a living, like just put together slideshows, put this on my resume. But no, it was regarding the 49ers, what I would call their draft philosophy.
Yeah.
And how that changed when they were a very deep team. And I think it was kind of troubling to hear from Kyle Shanahan, and I'm going to play the clip here. So let's see. And shout out also to David Lombardi, who posted this full clip of the interview on his YouTube. That's where I'm getting these. And also I think Grant posted it as well. So we didn't get any clips from John Lynch's interview for whatever reason. So I'm glad we were able to get at least something for Kyle. But here's what he had to say about the 49ers draft kind of changing in recent years.
Especially on defense. But we kind of want to create that everywhere. We haven't had that for a while. We've gone into drafts these last few years, not as much last year, but especially the 2 years prior, to where you look at our board and it's like, man, we don't really have to find a starter anywhere. You got to find depth, because quickly they're a starter with an injury. I remember going into 3 years ago and felt the only starting position we could find was a kicker, because we were so solidified. And it really isn't that way this year. So we're going to go into this draft, hopefully add 11 people. We'll see how that plans out, add them into our OTAs, and hopefully we'll have some really good competition come training camp.
So the greater point he was making with that, he was talking about the competition that they're trying to have this offseason and what he's expecting. But I think in that he made a hell of a revelation as to what their mindset was in those 2022, 2023 drafts, that I don't know if I could ever agree with or get behind. The fact that, hey, we're so stacked. We have all of our starters except the kicker. That's all we need. So let that be the only thing we draft, and to draft a kicker in the 3rd round too, I think tells you that's in support of what Kyle said, basically, which those drafts were a bit of a different kind of throwing something at the wall, see what sticks, just because, hey, we don't need starters. So we don't need to draft starters, which I find troubling, because I think it's part of the reason the 49ers are at a point that they are right now, where they felt like they had to pay guys these contracts because you didn't have someone waiting in the wings that you feel could replace any of those top end of your roster guys, right? Yeah. They weren't developing anyone, and there was no desire to, based on what I heard from Kyle Shanahan's quote there. So I find that troubling. What did you take away from what Kyle had to say there?
I'm not as troubled by it. I think it's an obvious point, or I think the point that he was trying to make, and it is not off base. I don't love it for the support of what his strategy is, but the reality is post 2019, so going into 20, 21, 22, 23, even going into 24, when you were drafting, you were not all of these guys are going to make my roster, right? If I have 7 to 10 picks, they're not going to make my roster.
Yeah.
And the reality is, and let's be very clear about this, and this will come up in the next topic, and I'm sure in just a moment. The coaches are always going to feel a little bit different about their players than the fans are, right? So it's fair to say that, and they're very aware. Hey, we can't have the best player in the league at every single position. It's literally just not possible. This guy, good enough, penciled in starter, not waste the resource. So I get what he was saying. Team was a very talented roster for a long period of time. The draft almost felt insignificant, right? Because the players were there and they were being extended. Now, again, that logic to me doesn't support that you just go in and fumble the draft like they have in past, because there's no depth, there's nothing along those lines. But I think what's really happening, a lot of people have talked about missing on positions, specifically the D line when they've drafted the D line. But I think because of the position that the 49ers were in, they were going for just like plus trait characteristic type people, right? Like
a lot of raw players.
That because if they missed, it wasn't that big of an impact, right? If
and
the roster
it wasn't a big impact
until now, until this moment, it matters.
And that's the thing that irritates me, because no team should draft only for that one season. Yes, you were stacked in 2022 and 2023, but that's not the only reason you draft. You draft for what may happen in years after that. You draft for the potential of losing some players in free agency. You draft for the potential of one of your starters having a catastrophic injury and, needing someone behind them. And you draft for, hey, like roster turnover. I don't want to pay this guy this huge contract. Luckily, I have someone right behind him who's just as capable of filling that spot. They did not have that. That's why I didn't like this at all. And the fact to me that I even admitted this, man, I don't think I would, because if a bad team came out and said the same thing, let's just say this came from the Jets, the Giants, the Browns, just any generationally bad team, we'd be laughing at them and be like, of course they would do this. I just, for a team like the 49ers to do this, it's really head scratching to me.
It is head scratching to say it out loud, right? I'm not surprised. Listen, teams do this all the time. Teams have terrible drafts, whether they're trying or not. It's a crapshoot. You know what I mean? So but to say it out loud is almost bro, take that back real fast. That's not what you meant to say, right? Is what you meant to say is we've been fortunate enough that in the past it didn't matter. And you want to we're upset about it. There's definitely going to be people upset about it. But to your point, it'd be drastically worse if this was the Jets, Giants, Browns, or somebody else who fumbled and then made this quote. Winning cures a lot of things. They've been able to get away with it because they've been winning a lot of football games prior to the 2024 season. And now you are now facing the consequences for those actions. Again, another thing that gets me more excited go forward is they've seemed to have, in my opinion, drafted relatively well when they've had to, right? 17, 18, even 19. Good enough, couple impact players here and there, 24, couple impact players, right? So I'm genuinely excited. I think they are owning and full court pressing that the draft is literally going to be where this team grows from,
I mean, it kind of has to, right? And to your point, back against the wall, they know they have to make and nail these picks. I think there's a different motivation to it. So in a sense, maybe it should make us feel a little bit better to know that those shitty 2022 and 2023 drafts, they weren't even trying. Because if they were trying and they failed, then, then I'd feel really bad. Silver linings, maybe. All right. Well, one of the other big topics that, we learned which we already kind of knew, was regarding the 49ers center position. That is, of course, Jake Brendel. Well, I think we already knew that when the 49ers didn't make any moves for one of those top centers in free agency, and to this point, they still haven't made a move for a center in free agency at all. I think we figured, okay, they must be pretty happy with Jake Brendel and what he has to bring. Well, Kyle Shanahan was asked to assess Jake Brendel's 2024 season, and oops, wrong one. This is what he had to say.
I thought Jake played well. Like, when you study centers throughout the league and things like that, and you watch all these guys, I think Jake's up there when it comes to his pass protection. A lot of these guys get mismatched against head of noses and some of the D tackles they got to go against. I think Jake does protection as good as anyone in this league, and I think he's always been a very good run player for us too.
Will Tennessee factor in at all? Would there be any sort of competition at that spot?
I didn't really look at it going in as Jake's competing. I think Jake's played at a pretty high level. I think our whole line has. It's going to be hard losing Banks. It's really
all
hard
right.
losing
So I think a lot of fans, of course, will be upset about that. As a whole, what he said at the end is true. Like, the whole offensive line has played at a pretty high level. I don't think that's not untrue, or I think that's true. The double negatives were the double negatives were confusing me, but no, like the line as a whole, I think is fine. There are a few bright spots to it, and there are a few like guys that I think bring down the entire line, or the perception of the line. Yeah. One of those guys, I think being Brendel, but obviously Kyle Shanahan, 49ers don't feel that way. And this has been the thing though for several years now, where 49er fans are very upset about the state of the 49ers offensive line. And yet, the front office, Kyle Shanahan, coaches, they feel good about where the offensive line is. So there's always that disconnect. I do think that, the fan perception of it is a little more exaggerated than what the reality is. At the same time, I do hope there is actually some competition at center. And whether or not Kyle wants to admit that right now is fine. Like, he doesn't have to. It's April. But I do hope they do give at least someone a shot to see how they do. Because, not just at the center position, but the 49ers have talked about this in the past. They want competition everywhere, right? Yep. Like, and that cultivates, guys who are hungry, get an opportunity, and before you know it, it's like they have the starting spot, and you would have never known that they had that in them unless they even had that shot of getting that competition, right? So I just think it's good practice to have guys compete, and I'll just leave it at that for Brendel.
I'm excited for, again, I keep going back to my level of excitement, because in years past, the competition never really existed because the players were already stenciled in as the starter, right? Or the number 2 based on the way the roster was forming. Now you don't know if you have the starter or not. So you got to open the doors, right? Like, Kyle can't afford to have another rookie wide receiver in the doghouse. They all got to be out there. They all got to be contributing. So you're going to see more of that. Here's the thing about the offensive line. I'm not as displeased with Brendel or McKivitz as maybe some others are. My frustration around the offensive line is the lack of consistent investment into it, because it is one of the places you should always be looking to improve, especially from a younger, cheaper perspective. And then what's most perplexing to me is, where is the contingency plan for Trent Williams, a Hall of Fame left tackle who has not been the same for a little while, right? Did not play well in the Super Bowl, was not healthy last year, and going through his own off the field stuff, right? Where does that leave him? And there's no plan in place. Like, they are praying he shows up for camp, and that's up to him. You know what I mean? Like, he can walk away from this game and not even worry about it in the slightest bit. So, like, that's where my frustration is. Look, I feel about the offensive line the same way I feel about defensive backs. And let me explain. So as we're watching a game, you might see a wide receiver catch a pass in the middle of the field beyond the safety, right? Or between the corner and the safety on a deep ball. And the person you blame is the one that's the closest to the wide receiver, right?
Yeah.
But that is rarely ever the case that it's that person's responsibility. It's a blown assignment. It's a blown coverage. So here's what I think. I think there have been moments where maybe McKivitz has looked bad, and it might have been, hey, the running back didn't get up to the second level and chip. The tight end didn't chip, right? And these are things that you think are going to take place in a game that's separated by centimeters, right? Like if that doesn't happen, things look a lot different on tape. I also think some of the poor performance, because here's the truth. They still run the ball for a heck of a ton of yards, regardless of who their running back is back there. And we also talk ad nauseum about how these wide receivers can't separate in man-to-man coverage. So is that the O-line's fault? Or that Brock Purdy's getting sacked? Or is it a coverage sack, right? These things, it's so many combination of things. And honestly, I think Kyle's offense got vanilla towards the end. Just real vanilla, real predictable. He openly talked about, hey, sometimes you're going to get a nose tackle head up or right in your right in the gap, right? And you don't know which way he's going to go. Well, I mean, that's the coach's job to have them coached up based on where they align. So I think there's blame everywhere. My disgust with the offensive line is more about the lack of investment in replacing a future literally Hall of Fame player. I think that's where I'm frustrated. I think it is true that Brendle's probably not even in the bottom half of the league in centers, right? There are worse right tackles in the league than Colton McKivitz. Those just have felt like the down spots across the line. Sorry, I have no idea what word I was trying to create in my brain to come out there. So I had to find the real one. But that's my thought along the line.
Yeah, Brendle's an interesting one. I can't say that I evaluate offensive linemen and offensive line play to the point where I can confidently say that Brendle is the only and biggest problem of the offensive line. He's not perfect.
We gotta get Brad in here. We gotta get Brad in here. Settle this.
So that's the thing, right? A lot of the times when I know there are people smarter than me who watch more tape than me, I look to those people and I hear out their opinions on certain players. Even these guys are divided that I've seen on Brendle and some of the offensive line play. So that's the part that, is tricky because I've seen it both ways from those film guys. So it's like, okay, what is the truth? Well, I think to your point, Weston, I think if there's anyone who knows the truth and has all the context of the play and what's supposed to happen and what the defense is doing and how that impacts what's happening, it's going to be Kyle, so it's going to be Chris Forrester.
And I want to say this. Can we just admit right here, right now on the 49 podcast, that it's just quite possible that Kyle, no matter how you feel about him, quite possible he just knows a little bit more about football than the rest of us. Maybe. Is that a stretch? Maybe not.
No, I mean, of course. I mean, but regardless, there's always going to be the, what do they call it? Armchair
Monday
GMs.
morning quarterback and the armchair GMs. Yep.
Yeah.
I'd like to think I'm one of those.
Yeah. What do you think we got a podcast?
You know what I mean? What do you think we're doing with our Monday nights and Tuesday nights these days?
Okay, but speaking of, we're doing a great job covering a lot of topics, and so this is exciting. So we can get to a topic that I was actually excited about, which is not this one, about what Kyle had to say about wrinkles to the offense and if he evaluates other teams and things like that. So I'll just play what he had to say.
In the off season for trying to figure out the next thing to do? Did you have a process for just where you want the offense to go that might be a little bit of a new wrinkle from year to year?
Yeah, I always try to do that. I always try to study offenses and what people are doing, what we're doing. But most of creativity or stuff that you come up with has to do with not just making stuff up. It has to do with thinking about how to use your players. So when you get certain guys or you get a different guy, it intrigues you a different way. And like when we got Christian, that opened up a lot of stuff. Having George over the years has opened up a lot of stuff. Having a player like Debo adds new ideas and things like that. And we'll see when we go in this draft what that can do. But you always got to try to stay ahead of the game. But you don't just do that with just drawing plays in a napkin. You do that with good players and thinking how to balance them out.
So I do think that's interesting. That's exciting because what it tells me is, hey, like with this draft, there's a possibility and a good one, I think, that Kyle brings in another playmaker, whether that's another running back, another wide receiver, a tight end, and maybe a couple of those, right? To find new wrinkles in this offense. And to your point earlier, like saying that, the offense was a little stagnant towards the end of last season. Well, it's been a lot of the same guys for a long time. And add on the fact you didn't have Brandon Ayuk, who's just a natural separator, good route runner. That's always something you can use in the NFL, right? Sure. So I think this draft is going to be that opportunity for Kyle to find new and different wrinkles. And, the player could already be on the team. Like they got Ricky Pearsall last year, right? We can expect he's going to have a larger role going into 2025. Isaac Rendo, the team obviously like what they saw from him, and, he's going to have a larger role. So that's the other part that's exciting. Like I want to see Kyle get creative with a new player and, just pretty much create a player type stuff in Madden and mold him into this perfect role in this offense.
I just appreciate what Kyle's saying. Like I feel like we're going to get a lot of truth over the next few months coming out of Santa Clara, right? Like just a little more like openness. And I agree. They've had the same players and it's worked. So there hasn't been much tweaking going on.
Sure. Yeah.
And Kyle's talked about getting back to being a good football team. Well, Kyle needs to get back to doing what he does best, and that's exploiting defenses with his scheme. I think for the last few years, we've just seen them try to find a player that fits a Kyle Shanahan mold. The go forward sounds a little bit more like, I want to find guys that I think we can do some things with, but it gets back to coach the talent. That's what coaches do. They coach the talent, right? Like, hey, didn't know that Steph could throw the ball 65 yards downfield. Sounds like we're going to work in a bubble screen to her at wide receiver and let her air that thing out. You know what I mean? Like, just like seeing this talent and then being able to take advantage of it.
That's just where we're at right now.
It's playing. There you go. Just letting you know it was playing still.
Oh yeah. Sorry. I was teeing up the next clip because I'm ready for a segue here to what we were just talking about. And, I think new players in this offense is a good thing. One player that they added in the offseason, one of the free agents, was Luke Farrell, right? And a lot of people were somewhat up in arms about that contract because they're like, why are you paying a T2 all this money and all this stuff? And, also when the final numbers of that contract came out, it wasn't even that bad.
No.
Same thing as every time. Always wait for the final numbers, people. Yeah. But anyway, Kyle Shanahan was asked about, why the TE2 is important to, his offense. And I think I found the right spot to where he's talking about this. So I'll go ahead and put it up on the screen here.
Right now. We really needed a number 2 blocking tight end. I mean, losing Charlie without, we haven't been able to replace him yet. I thought Eric came in and did some good things for us last year, but for Luke to be available where we got him price-wise and everything, we thought we got one of the better blockers in this league, and someone who can also bring some stuff in the pass game also.
Does that rule you out for a tight end in the draft? It's supposed to be a good draft at that position this year.
I don't think we're ruled out at really any player. So none of that really rules us out, but definitely helps us going in the draft, having a little bit more depth there.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, I like that it doesn't rule out tight end in the draft. And, in case you guys haven't heard, two of the 49ers known and reported 30 visits have been with tight ends, or are going to be with tight ends. Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green, and Texas Tech tight end Jalen Conyers. So they are doing their due diligence on tight ends, even with this Luke Farrell move. So, to Kyle's point, doesn't rule it out. But I agree, like, they needed a good, solid blocking tight end, and that was Charlie Warner at one point in time. And I think we kind of underestimated just how good Charlie Warner was in his role. And again, it's like people assume that because he doesn't catch the ball all that much, or because you don't hear his name often, that they don't do anything for this team. Oh, you get him off this team. Let's bring someone else in. But that's just not the case. And, as Kyle mentioned, like, they needed a blocking TE too. And they've been trying to find someone that I think had the same type of chops that Charlie Warner had at it, unsuccessfully for the last couple of years. They feel like they got that with Luke Farrell now, and that's going to open things up for George Kittle.
You just talked about the evolution of the offense and diversifying it and being able to do things different. Something that we just didn't see a lot in 2024 because they weren't able to do it, right? They didn't have the body. And not saying the new tight end gives them that ability just because we stencil his name in on paper. Need to see it to come to fruition. But there is a lot to be said when you're in a 2 tight end alignment and you don't know which way that ball's going, because either one of them can take out the end, right? And that does so much forget the passing game. It does so much for the run game, right? Like, it just, no, you're not tipping a play. It can go either way. You leave it to the quarterback to pat one side of the hip to let the running back know which way it's going, and you just let your guys do what they do, and then what it's going to contribute into the passing game as well, especially freeing up 85 and letting Kittle run around out there. Again, just another evolution to the offense. Hopefully getting back to an area of comfort where then you just start to, because what do the best play callers in the league do, Steph? Everything looks the same. Everything looks the same. Right. Same formation, same alignment, same splits, etc. Now you don't know what's coming, right? And that's when Kyle, not just Kyle, McVay, everybody from that tree, that's what they do so well, is they can call 10 different plays out of the same exact formation. That's why the tight end 2 is so important for them.
Yeah, and along with all this talk about competition, all this talk about new players, new blood that the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan is going to get, Robert Saleh is going to get in this draft, we're going to get a reinvigorated team, I think. And it's hard to see right now, right? Because the defense is bare bones.
Sure. We're hanging on by a thin string right now as fans. I get it.
So it's hard to see that vision right now. Yeah. But I do think that after this draft, and once we get into off-season programs and all that, like, I think we're just going to see a bunch of hungry players, and we're also going to see, like I said, reinvigorated coaching staff, reinvigorated Kyle Shanahan. I mean, he talked about it. Like, this is probably the most excited that he's been going into a new season, right? So I think it's refreshing to see these changes, I think, for everyone involved. So it was time.
Think about it from the player's perspective, right? An historic franchise. I'm a new person here, obviously coming off a down season. Kyle and John have reputations as large as life, right? And you're a new player coming in with an opportunity to maybe reinvent the franchise, re-energize the franchise. Like, that's what competition's about. That's what playing professional sports is all about. Like, that's how you go earn the second payday. I'm not overly optimistic for the end result, but I am fired up for the season because we're about to see what the next few years are potentially going to look like. And I am excited with the directions that could possibly go. Now, they could blow this all up on draft night and just ruin everything. That's certainly possible. But for where we sit right now on April 1st, happy April Fool's Day, by the way, I'm excited. Like, I am super excited. It's hard for me to contain it.
April Fools, but no jokes happening here.
That's right. All business. all business on a Tuesday night.
All business. And this has been a great show. Like we've touched on a lot of topics. And again, like I think we're ending on a good note. Like just excited for this season. It's sink or swim time for this 49ers team, and we'll see how they do. Of course, the 49ers seem to have confidence in their plan. We'll see how it plays out. But thank you guys so much for tuning in on a Tuesday. Again, we don't normally go live on Tuesdays, in the off season, but appreciate you all. Appreciate you, Weston, for the flexibility. Make sure you guys like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, not just mine, but Weston's as well. Island 49. He has great takes, as you guys hear on this show quite often. So if you want more of those takes, go ahead and subscribe to his channel. Audio listeners, please leave a rating, leave a review. Really helps us out. And just a quick reminder, I've been doing the 49K Prospect Spotlights exclusively on my YouTube channel. YouTube subscribers, you guys probably know that by now. I've done many. I did one earlier today with BYU cornerback Jacob Robinson. You guys should check that one out. He talked about Dalmador Lenore. They share the same agent, so he got to meet him, and he talked about him for a bit. He's spoken with the 49ers, so check that one out. Great kid. And then coming up here shortly, again exclusively on YouTube, going to be going live with Tulane defensive lineman Aiden Huntington. So make sure you guys check that one out. Appreciate all of you. Make sure you also check out the draft sheet, bit.ly/bit.ly 49ers Draft Tracker 2025, so you can stay up to date on who the 49ers are meeting with, all the visits that we know of so far. There's a few now, so make sure you guys check that out. But for now, folks, have a good rest of your Tuesday, great rest of your week. Peace.